Hey everyone, Andrew here from Truck Parking Club. I am joined by Milco Cipriani. If I'm not saying that right, Milco, feel free to beat me over the head. He's a Truck Parking Club member here and has been one for quite some time, with multiple properties. And for those who don't know who Truck Parking Club is or what we do, we're the largest network of reservable truck parking across the nation. 4,300 plus locations, closing in at 4,400, tens of thousands of truckers on the platform. And we're really made to just run your business and make it easy for you, just like it runs my business. We handle the marketing. Your property shows up on our app, Google, Trimble, all across social media. We handle the payments, billing, disputes, and collections. We put up the signage. We do access controls. I mean, basically, we run your business so you can just go ahead and keep on developing properties. And having said that, Milco is one of the coolest developers I know in the industrial outdoor storage space, the truck parking space. He's based out of Houston. Milco, feel free to go ahead and introduce yourself and we'll get into it.
Thanks, Andrew. My name is Milco. I'm one of the managing partners at Hyde Park Real Estate. We are a real estate investment firm focused on acquiring industrial assets across major Texas markets. And within, the industrial realm, we focus specifically on industrial outdoor storage properties, IOS, and also single tenant manufacturing buildings.
Awesome. So go ahead and just so the audience kind of knows like your footprint, right? You have, I believe, about 3 or 4 properties on Truck Parking Club today. I know you're doing some things with those properties. How big is your portfolio and how long you've been doing this?
So we started Hyde Park in 2021. So it's been roughly about 4 to 5 years since we started. The first few properties we bought were, pure yards, no improvement, and the intention was to lease them on a triple net basis to a single tenant. A few of those did get leased and some didn't, which led us to exploring other options such as truck parking. To date, we have done, I believe, 17 acquisitions. Our portfolio is currently 15 IOS or industrial properties across Texas. And yeah, I'm looking to expand some more. But on the truck parking side, we have 3 that are currently on the Truck Parking Club that we're actively operating truck parking on.
Right on. And go ahead and tell me, because I speak to a lot of, people that are getting into the industry, right? And they want to go ahead and, get some expert advice about not only, the operations and Truck Parking Club, we'll get to that, but the development side. What did that look like, ground up development? What kind of hurdles did you run into? Things of that nature.
Yeah, so a lot. But yeah, so look, it really depends on the property, the municipality you're in. Just every property presents unique challenges in itself. Some of the most common themes we saw across all the property types was definitely drainage, and how to handle storm water. That be detention, especially being here in Houston. There's a lot of rain, it floods. So, dealing with the county and the city of Houston and being able to navigate that piece was definitely pretty challenging. And, number one, you're having to do detention ponds, which takes away, usable land and parking area from your property, and also trying to figure out the most cost efficient way of, placing the pond in a place where you're losing, let's call it the least efficient or usable area in that lot, and also trying to minimize the size of it. So it's kind of a dance, right? You have, in one hand, you want to control your costs, and in another hand, you also want to make it efficient. And sometimes, in order to make it really efficient, it's going to be really expensive. So that's kind of the dance that we had to play on a lot of these sites. And thankfully, we were able to get across those hurdles and solve those issues.
Yeah, and how was starting in 21, probably, and tell me if I'm wrong, but maybe your first property went online in 22. If you're developing, maybe it was in 21. But what was the early days Like, I mean, a lot of single tenants, a little bit of truck parking. Like, what were you really into at first?
Our first property, it took us about a year and a half to acquire our first site. So we started in 21, did our first acquisition in August of 2022. That site was more value add than development. All we had to come in, just restabilize, put some new fencing, some lighting in, and the property already had utilities in place and an office trailer that we just replaced as well. So from a development standpoint, that was not a development. It was, I would call it existing, and it just needed a heavy value add. But in those times, it was still what we would consider post-COVID, and at least we bought it in August. It was leased by September of that same year. Tenant moved in October. So that was a very pleasant experience. It stayed lease. That tenant since vacated, and that property is actively operating as a truck parking lot. But yeah, look, as far as the early days go, I would say that tenants were less sophisticated in the type of space that they needed, and that might have been just because of the supply chain disruptions and just trying to figure out what was going on in terms of logistics and how they were going to manage their inventory and equipment long term. And as they got smarter and started to figure out the supply chain, they realized that most of these yards that don't have buildings for most of the groups out there on a triple net basis, they were a little bit harder to lease just because most of the groups that needed yard also needed the building. So, that created a little bit of a slowdown for us in the yard only product. But in itself, we were able to pivot into truck parking and thankfully, create some cash flow or income to keep these properties moving forward.
No, and that's a great kind of segue, going into the truck parking space. And I'm glad you brought up the warehouse with the yard or just yard only, because you're absolutely right. It's just different customers, different needs. And kind of tell me, as you moved into that yard only, strategy, and I would imagine you probably do other things as well, but how'd you find Truck Parking Club and why'd you decide to list with Truck Parking Club?
Right. So, when very early on, when we would put together our business plans, the goal was always let's go do the value, let's acquire, go do the value add. And if it's not leased by the time we're done with our value add strategy, let's list it on truck parking websites and generate some income in the interim while a long-term lease is secured. In the early days, there really wasn't a predominant truck parking operator or someone who could facilitate this, and most of the people that we knew that were doing truck parking were still are collecting rent checks every month in cash or in actual checks in person. And their system is a whiteboard where they have everyone's name written down. And if a stall leaves, that's kind of how they manage it. So look, it looked very different back then, but which I mean back then is 4 or 5 years ago, but
Yeah, right.
We found Truck Parking Club by going to some of these trucking conferences and seeing the booth that's always there, and also just LinkedIn presence, which led us to connect, try it out, and ultimately we're pretty pleased with how it's worked out for us.
Awesome. Yeah. And kind of, tell me, and obviously, everyone knows that my whole site, my whole operation runs on Truck Parking Club just for sanity aspect. But really for you, like, what did it really take off of your plate? Like what was your biggest, was it the payments, the marketing, chasing down, whatever it might be? Like, what was oh, okay, this is much easier now. Or what kind of was like took a deep breath and I'm like, oh, thank God I did this.
I would say the marketing is a big piece.
Mhm.
Would say compared to other sites, some sort of truck parking software or truck parking management software, the predominant one is truck parking club. So it helps with the marketing, especially, as we started to get more truckers parking on the sites and getting reviews and moving up and showing up earlier in the algorithm per se.
Mhm.
I think it definitely helped a ton with the marketing. Some of the other marketing that we were doing was just handing out flyers, some of these truck stops near our properties and putting down yard signs around the nearby streets where we knew truckers were trafficking. But yeah, definitely marketing is a big one, and then also the payments. It's pretty easy. And one thing I will say is the ease of signing up on Truck Parking Club is definitely second to none. It's pretty easy to get customers onboarded and get them parking.
Yeah, and I mean, I and not to sing your praises too much, but I like to do that. I think you're a great guy. When I look at the way you look at this business, one thing we met at a iOS conference last year, and I told you about pricing and how I've been kind of a mad scientist about this, and I've been testing it at my own yard. And you decided to kind of follow the same strategy with your multiple yards in Houston, and I mean, it. If the numbers are looking correct, it was $2,000 all the way up to $8 or $9,000 within just a month or two, which in a market like Houston's, I mean, you guys were the leader there. So tell me about that. Tell me your thoughts about that. And, yeah, just really how you feel about it. And if anybody's on the fence about doing something like that, what would your advice be?
I would say do it. Look, I think ultimately it's one of the main barriers or discussions that we had internally was mainly like, look, would we rather sign one monthly lease at $150, $200 a stall, or we would sign 67 per month? And ultimately we decided to try it out and came to the conclusion that, once they're in, it's a sticky tenant base. It's hard for them to leave, even though they are price sensitive. I think if you're pricing it within the market, I think it's the way to go to, price it a little bit cheaper, and start getting to your occupancy. And once you get to the occupancy, start slowly raising rents. I think obviously, and also depends on your market, where you're at within that market, right? I think what just keeps a Katie, and in that sub market, we got cheap. It's quite a long shot. So it became a really popular parking spot. Reviews started coming in, and you get that word of mouth. Truckers do speak to each other, and we definitely started getting more traffic and traction that way. So
Yeah,
highly
and oh no, and I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but this is it's a really good kind of, again, thinking about the next kind of topic. I get asked this quite a lot. Like, what does the tenant base look like? What does the customer base look like? What's the lifetime value? You mentioned that, like, once you have somebody in your property. I mean, personally, I've had guys at my property for years, and I don't think they'll ever leave. So for anybody else that's coming from multifamily, just give them your advice there or your experience.
look. I think obviously very diverse tenant pool as far as nationalities. You get them from all over the place. Some Hispanic, some are European or Eastern European. You get some African people as well, but very diverse mix of truck drivers. One thing they all have in common, I think they all have a very good sense of ownership and pride, and they take pride in where they park. They don't want it to look bad. They want someone who, even if something is wrong at the lot, for that to get fixed and for them to just be acknowledged.
Yeah.
I would say one of the main takeaways that we have in terms of what our tenant pool looks like is that they're all very communicative, and they get used to parking somewhere. So the 2 weeks ago, we had someone call us and say, "Hey, someone's parking in my spot. Does this mean you gave our spot away or something like that?" And we're like, "No, we'll go and fix it." So they become quite accustomed to just being in the lot, parking in the same spot, and just making sure that everything is running the same way. But I would say in the contrary, they're great, and we have to do stuff for them. So just trying to reach out constantly. If a truck is parked in the wrong place, just reaching out via the app and just saying, "Hey, is this your truck? Can you move it? Is everything okay with the yard? What can we do to improve it?" And some of the feedback was get a trash container or dumpster out there. Oh, we did. And just small things that when you're just opening the lot, you're focused on just raising your occupancy to hit your revenue numbers, but there's other small things to consider as well.
Yeah. Well, I have to give you credit again. I mean, I'd never personally done this in my own yard, but you gave out gift cards and said, "Hey, if you go ahead, here's a gift card, write us a review on truckparkingclub.com." There's other existing property members that listen to this as well. What would you say about that?
Um, Again, it goes hand in hand with the aspect of their sense of pride in parking somewhere, and feeling taken care of. One of the things that we had to do was go read the reviews and see which ones were not great. And after they check out, you can't really have contact with them on the app. But for the people that are parking there on a monthly basis, they can't leave a review until they leave. So for them, it was more like, "Hey, what can we do for you in the meantime while you are here to make the property thing working to your liking?" And for the people that were parking on a weekly, it's just saying, "Hey, thanks for parking with us. How was your experience? What can we do to make it better? Can you leave us a review?"
So, Milko, for anybody that's on the fence, like a developer, right, that's looking to get into iOS truck parking, or even anybody that's on the fence of listing their site on truckparkingclub.com, what would your advice be for both those individuals?
I'll start with the developer question. Big piece of advice, at least for us, would be just do your market research. Make sure you understand, what you're building, where you're building it. Speak to someone like you who has data, and is able to relay information that is not readily accessible on the market. And also speak to truckers as far as design goes. Making sure your curb cuts are wide enough. Making sure physical aspects of your site meet the expectations of the truckers that are going to be parking there and are going to be your customers. So I would say that those are the biggest factors. I would also say having some sort of shop or repair shop is really useful. You a lot of the calls that we get nowadays are like, "Hey, I see your lot. It looks great. I'll have a shop where you can do tire or oil changes and stuff like that." So maybe we haven't done it, but our thought process has been we can lease that shop out to say a mechanic who can work on the customers that are parking in the yard, and kind of create that synergy between the two of them, right? So
Yeah.
I think that would be that. And then as far as using Truck Parking Club, I would say definitely use it. It's a great tool, like I said earlier, and then conversation for marketing. It definitely helps with marketing, getting your name out there. It also facilitates the payments and the management of the lots. You can speak to the customers directly on there. So definitely a win-win for anyone looking to get into the space. And it's just very seamless, the transition of being on the platform and then starting to collect income from truckers.
Yeah. And I mean, lastly, for anybody that's listening, they want to get in touch with you. I mean, you're technically a veteran now in this space with 4 years of experience, but I mean, that says a lot in this space, right? How can they get a hold of you? How can they talk deals with you? How can they just pick your brain? How can they get to you?
Yeah, just shoot me an email is the best way to connect. Milco at hydeparkcre.com. I don't know if you could put it up somewhere, but and Milco is Milco at hydeparkcre. So shoot me an email. I'm pretty good there.
Awesome, man. Well, Milco, I appreciate this so much. I'm really happy with how your properties have done on the platform. I'm really happy to call you a friend. And honestly, man, I'm hoping for the best here in the next couple of years for you. And again, for everyone tuning in, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.